Forrester's mysterious ways. Do you believe in psychic phenomena, ghosts, and psychic detectives? 2 weeks ago, to the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, just north of Tarrytown, New York, home of Washington Irving's Legend of Sleepy Hollow and home of the Headless Horseman. Strange things started to happen from the moment we got there. When we first arrived, after returning, and it started to happen when we first arrived and after we returned home from post-production. It all began with a visit to the grave of Hulga, the Bohemian witch. Now, you might wonder why a witch is buried in a Christian cemetery, but we'll get to that. As we were talking about Hulga at her gravestone, the audio started cutting in and out. We also captured an orb on video, and the video file simply disappeared. I've never had such trouble with video in all my years. This place is truly haunted. The Headless Horseman was rumored to be a Hessian soldier whose head was blown off by cannonballs during some unnamed revolutionary battle. Legend has it he rides through the cemetery from dusk till dawn in search of his head and to terrorize the local people. Washington Irving said the horseman is buried in an unmarked Sleepy Hollow grave, but his riding spirit is still to go through the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery starting at dusk, so he has to return to the cemetery before dawn. We'll be taking a tour of the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, and later we'll be joined by Vinny Parco, a private investigator with over 40 years' experience, to discuss, are psychic detectives real, and can they truly help police investigations? But first, let's take a truly haunted trip to the home of the Headless Horseman in the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery in Sleepy Hollow, New York. Welcome to historic Sleepy Hollow, settled in 1640, home of the famous Old Dutch Church and the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. Let's explore. Welcome to the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, which dates back to the 1600s. Let's do a little ghost hunting and exploration of the history, churches, and tombstones, and the real-life witch that is buried in the cemetery. Outside of the cemetery, you'll see the statue of the Headless Horseman, which stands 19 feet tall. The Headless Horseman, carrying a pumpkin as a head, was not a part of the original Irving story. It was later added by the popular Disney movie. The Old Dutch Church was built in the mid-1600s and has a congregation that still worships there weekly to this day. It is still heated and lit by the original methods used when the church was built. The oldest gravestones and plots around the Old Dutch Church include that of a real witch. There were originally only 3 acres around the Old Dutch Church. Later, 100 acres were bought from a local farmer and expanded to over 90 acres of cemetery land. You'll find Revolutionary War soldiers to prominent Dutch families buried here. What would Halloween be without a trip to the cemetery? And we are at one of the largest in the country. It's 90 acres, and it is the old Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, where Washington Irving wrote the book, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, centered around this location. This placard has the legends and lores of the Headless Horseman. He tethers his horse nightly among the graves in our churchyard, according to the legend of Sleepy Hollow. Author Washington Irving. Let's go explore the cemetery and see what ghosts we can conjure up. We're located at the gravestone of Washington Irving, author of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. The Sleepy Hollow Cemetery is only 25 miles north of the Hudson River from New York City. And Washington Irving brought the legend of the Headless Horseman to notoriety. The Headless Horseman mythology existed way before Washington Irving wrote his book. And the Headless Horseman is said to gallop through the cemetery in the night, looking for his head and looking to terrorize local people. Let's speak to the spirit of Washington Irving for a moment, because I am a medium and professional ghost hunter as well. Washington Irving is very proud that people still come to his cemetery and people who still come to his tombstone. He is also very proud that people remember him, and he brought the legend of the headless horseman to notoriety, which is the subject of many Disney films and other films dealing with the legend of Sleepy Hollow. He is very proud that people still come to visit his cemetery and his plot. We're here at the gravestone of Eleanor Van Tassel Brush, who is said to be the motivation of Washington Irving's Katrina, who Ichabod Crane was fighting for her hand in marriage. Some say he was only after her for her money because she came from a very wealthy family. And it is Ichabod Crane, the famous character from Washington Irving's book, that the headless horseman chased through the cemetery. It is said that Ichabod Crane fought for her hand in marriage because she was wealthy, and Ichabod Crane wanted her wealth. So he chased her as a suitor. And it is said that he was chased by the headless horseman through the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, was thrown from his horse on the bridge, and never seen from again. The style and artwork and architecture abound in the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, from intricate angels to various styles of mausoleums, including the Vanderbilts to the Ford family and Leona Helmsley, the Queen of Mean, to the Carnegie family. Many of the mausoleums here at Old Sleepy Hollow were influenced by different types of architecture. We're at the Hunting-Howell Mausoleum, which has a Greek influence to it. Many of the mausoleums are adorned with stained glass and are very beautiful to see. This is definitely a place to go ghost hunting. We're here at an absolutely beautiful day in Sleepy Hollow, and we're at the Rhinelander Mausoleum. The Rhinelanders were people of great wealth and great social standing in this community. Most of the people that are buried here were Dutch and Germanic and kept to themselves. They did not want outsiders living in their community. The Rhinelanders, I am picking up, were people of great wealth, great social standing. And Mr. Rhinelander goes out at night and walks through this cemetery looking for his wealth, looking for his home, and looking for the things that he left behind. According to the legend, our witch, a woman named Hulda, received somewhat better treatment after her death than many of her colleagues. She was granted the privilege of burial in this churchyard. Hulda, an immigrant from Bohemia, lived alone in a cabin in the woods where she gathered herbs and traded with Indians. Her neighbors, when ill, sometimes found baskets of healing herbal potions at their door and suspected Hulda to be the anonymous donor. Yet most folks were so afraid of her that it took a brave person to pass her cabin, even in broad daylight. We're here at the cemetery plot of Hulda, the patriotic witch. You might wonder why a witch is buried in a Christian cemetery. So let's read some about why she is here and her role in the time period in which she lived. As a Bohemian immigrant and herbalist who lived alone, Hulda was viewed with suspicion by the Dutch community. When she took up her rifle and joined the Patriots, her neighbors avoided her. Legend has it she killed several enemies before she herself was killed, and that a find found her tucked away with her Bible and left a small store of gold for the war widows. Witch or no witch, the community gave her a Christian burial, and possibly near the spot. You'll notice that people have left coins and stones on top of her grave. This is a memory of her spirit, and it is also magic that people are doing with Huldah, the patriotic witch. You'll notice that someone left a jar at her tombstone. This would be considered voodoo, and someone is invoking her spirit or buying her spirit to do a magical spell or magical workings for her. So people have left coins and stones in memorial to Huldah, the patriotic witch. We are going to leave pieces of silver on her tombstone as a memory to her and as respect for Huldah, the patriotic witch. This is the bridge where the headless horseman attacked Ichabod Crane. Although it's been rebuilt several times, the energy there still exists. A brook runs under the bridge. Rushing and flowing water is said to carry psychic information. We're at the famous bridge where Ichabod Crane was chased by the headless horseman. He fell off his horse to his death and was never seen from again. The headless horseman is said to continue to ride on this bridge at night, searching for people to terrorize. The Celtic influence was very strong among the Dutch people, and we're here at the Celtic Cross tombstone of Andrew Carnegie, industrialist and entrepreneur, also founder of Carnegie Hall. We're at the gravestones of the brewers. What I am picking up from the brewers is extreme wealth, extreme prosperity. One of the first motor cars that existed, they had. Mrs. Brewer wore the finest of gowns and attended the greatest of cotillions. She was a socialite in her own right. Mr. Brewer was a Wall Street executive and managed the money market funds and was a great leader in the financial world. That is what I am getting from the Brewer family plot. Some say you can't take it with you, but the spirits of Sleepy Hollow disagree. Once a month, when the moon is full, they rise from their crypts, their mausoleums, and their tombstones, and have a royal cotillion with a ghostly band and free-flowing spectre champagne. I really wish we would have been able to show you the orb because it passed below the bridge, and it was the spirit of somebody that was trying to communicate or pass before us. But like I said, that file just simply vanished. It disappeared. Our next guest is Vinny Parco. Vinny Parco is a private investigator with over 40 years' experience. He is also a certified forensic examiner and certified fraud examiner. He has received an award from the FBI and is the author of 5 books. Vinny also hosts his own Facebook, YouTube podcast, Law and Disorder, which airs weekly on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Many years ago, I worked for Vinny and his daughter Danielle, and we've known each other for over 25 years. Please welcome Vincent Vinny Parco.
Good evening. Thank you for the introduction. And that was a very, very nice presentation. Very interesting and very well done. Very well done. You really
Thank you, Vinny.
You put a lot of work into that. I appreciate it. So what do you want to talk about? I can talk about, we use you as a psychic investigator. Now, I believe that all good investigators have some sort of psychic ability, just a little bit, but that's all you need sometimes, a little bit. For example, I was on the job for like 2 years with the state. I was a state investigator before I was a private investigator. and we had a series of killings in New York City from Son of Sam. And like everyone else, we followed the news reports and stuff like that. But what happened was one of the first women that were killed lived about 10 blocks from me, and I lived in the Bronx at the time. And my next door neighbors, who are very close to me, went to school with her. So I started looking into. Now, I remember I was a state investigator. I was not assigned this case. I had nothing to do with the case other than an interested observer. And what I noticed about the pattern was that this man, whoever he was at the time, seemed to me to be a loner. I profiled him as an office worker, a very boring job, a very boring person, and also very resentful of women going out with men, because I had a feeling that he had no female companionship, which we found out later was true. And I looked at the pattern and I said, you know what? The next place he's going to kill somebody is in Riverdale, New York, which is part of the Bronx, the northern part of the Bronx. And when they arrested him, he was going to Riverdale. Now, I'm not a psychic investigator, but I believe that I had some inkling as to what he was going to do. Now, my brother was an officer on the Triborough Bridge, and before that, he was on the Whitestone Bridge. He had a partner that could spot a stolen car a mile away. He just had a knack for it. And the point I'm trying to make is that certain investigators, some detectives, have an innate notion about certain things. You have some really good detectives out there, what they call cold case investigators. They have a case that's been dead cold for 15, 20 years, and they go back into it, and they get an inkling, they get an idea of something that might just click, and then they find the killer. And I believe that is somewhat of a psychic ability in the part of an investigator. Now, you have psychic investigators that are really psychics, like you. I've used you on a case. For example, we had the murder case. Well, it wasn't a murder case in the beginning. It was a missing persons case in Hofstra University. The family hired me. One of the parents, they were divorced. The parent was a lawyer, and the wife was I forgot what she was, but she was a lesbian. They had a divorce. She was a lesbian, and she came in with her lesbian partner. Now, why did I bring this up? The boy that was killed, or was missing at the time, had some issues with that, which I believe. When we were doing the investigation, the police in Nassau County said, we will do everything in Nassau County. You do everything in New York City, because the kid was a film student. He was very interested in movies, films, things of that nature. So my staff and myself, we hit all the movie studios, the production companies, and there are quite a few in Manhattan, and we're trying to locate them. Now, Paula, you had an inkling, or psychic inkling, however you want to describe it, that he was in a field in Long Island, where this thing was started. And guess what? When they found the body, he was in a field in Long Island. And one of his roommates, or one of his classmates, killed him. Now, here's the interesting part. The boy who was killed, very nice, from what I understand, he was a really nice kid. The guy that killed him had some issues with homosexuality. When he found out that this kid's mother was a lesbian, it ticked something off in his head. And I believe he tried to have homosexual sex with the boy, and he refused, and that's why he killed him. But the point I'm making is that you had an inkling, or you had a psychic ability that where he was. Now, we also did the case Irene Silverman. Now, for your viewers, let me give a summary. Irene Silverman was a landlord. She owned a townhouse on the east side, very expensive townhouse. She was also a socialite. Yeah. Now, she was a client of mine years before that with a landlord-tenant case where she had some tenants and we had to investigate. And eventually she kicked them out. Or by law, she went to court and got rid of them. when the Kimes, the mother and son, got involved with her, they were grifters, they were con artists, and they tried to con her out of a house. I forgot how what they actually did, but I don't think it worked, and they killed her. Now, the point that I'm trying to make is that you came in on my side, and we tried to figure out what happened or what could we do, and you thought in your mind that you felt that she was buried in New Jersey. We actually, my son who worked for me, myself and you, went to Jersey and we looked at this field, but we didn't find the body. And then years later, after they were arrested and the son, as we say in the law enforcement, flipped on his mother, he admitted that they buried her in New Jersey. Now, how can I describe what you did for us? Psychic investigation. You had a psychic inkling. Now I understand, not on my watch, but on your own, you found Boris, the missing dog, that was shuttled between airports. Correct me if I'm wrong. He was missing, yeah. Right. And you found him, I think in Boston. Where was it? In Boston that you found him?
Corona, Queens.
Corona, Queens. Well, in our backyard. So,
yeah, he got missing from Delta Airlines at LaGuardia.
Wow. Well, you found him, and nobody else did. But how did you find him? You found him with some sort of psychic ability.
Yeah.
And I believe people who have this.
I kept seeing that he was sleeping in tires, and he was found behind a tire repair shop.
Okay. Now, everybody knows when you hear someone says, we got a deja vu. When you see something and you see it again, you say, well, I saw this once before. Well, that could be a precursor to psychic ability. And as I said before, some of you have investigators or detectives that are very good at their job because they have this, I guess it's a psychic ability for that particular specialty. For example, I've worked with detectives that were good in narcotics. Now, they weren't good in other areas. Like, for example, in my company, we did all kinds of investigations, okay? So you try to put the right investigator with the right job. So you have missing people, you have narcotic cases, you have landlord-tenant, you have all these different type of cases. Now, we had a couple guys that were excellent with narcotic cases. They could spot a drug dealer. They knew when he was carrying. These guys were good, but they couldn't do anything else. Now, it doesn't make them bad. It just means that they were specialized in that one thing. And I noticed that same thing with homicide. We've had homicide detectives that were excellent. They got the inkling. They can interview a number of people, suspects, let's say, and they can feel who the bad guy is, who the real perpetrator is. And again, I have to say it's a psychic ability. But now, not a psychic ability where you could tell what the lottery number is going to be tomorrow or what horse is going to win the race. That's not going to happen. As a matter of fact, when we were working on the Silverman case, one of my guys had a connection with the chief of detectives. The chief of detectives called my office and said, what are you guys doing? And I told him, I said, hey, listen, if you are so good at what you do, tell me who's going to win the race tomorrow, in the seventh race or something like that. I said, come on, we can't do that. But you were able to say, and was proven, that this body was found and buried in New Jersey. So you do have, you yourself have a psychic ability. And there are many good investigators out there that have it. Now, somebody might just say,
one of the sergeants tell me that if I could give him the winning lottery numbers, he would believe me. So sometimes the police aren't very nice to psychics either. They're very suspicious of them. I know that in high profile cases, thousands of psychics call in with tips. And how do you weed out the good ones from the bad ones?
Well, that's a problem. It depends on the type of case. Like, for example, this case with Laundrie, who killed, allegedly, it's not proven yet that he killed his girlfriend, but everybody knows that he did. But, people had this, you want to say psychic ability, to know that he was in this uh, wilderness, that this what is it, a conservation park near the where he lived. Now it's ironic that the parents actually went there and they found the remains, and the medical examiner came over, and I had a feeling that they knew where the body was. Maybe they just try to cover it up, but they're the parents. You can't blame them for that, even though legally they shouldn't have done it. But
yeah,
I'm sure you had hundreds of psychics that might have called in and said, "I think I know where the body is. It's in this reserve or preserve, whatever you want to call it." And then that's a calculated guess also. I mean, if anything, everything points to that preserve. I'm sorry, it's a preserve. Now, again, as I go back to good detectives, they have an instinct. They have an instinct of certain types of cases, and you can say it's psychic, and you could just say it's good investigation, but it is what it is.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, there is some skepticism. There is a lot of skepticism about psychics.
Yeah.
But I think they're necessary.
What do you think of psychics that directly contact the families? Do you think that's in bad taste?
Yes, I think a psychic should contact whoever's in charge of the investigation. The problem is, what if the person in charge of the investigation is not listening to them, doesn't want to, doesn't care, or thinks that they're lying, or they think that they're wrong? A good investigator takes every lead, every tip, and tries to explore them and try to find out what's going on with them.
It's interesting because going back to the Irene Silverman case, Sante Kimes, who was one of the killers, she was a mother of the mother and son grifter team, found me. That's Irene Silverman. She's the one that got murdered. And Sante and Kenny Kimes, we have a picture of them too. The mother and son grifter team, that's them. They were also lovers. Sante called me from California, from jail, because they got extradited to California. Now, the phone where I was living was not in my name, so she used a private investigator to find me. And she wanted to fly me out to California to help her prove her innocence. And of course, I didn't go because I didn't want to be the next one in the San Francisco Bay, because they had a history of killing people. So it's interesting that I got called by a serial killer.
Wow. Yeah, they killed somebody in California, right? They did the same crime in California as they did with the Irene Silverman.
Yeah.
Now, what made the son turn on the mother?
The mother died.
Yeah, but
and then the son turned on. Yeah, he turned on her after she died.
Oh, after she died. Okay.
After she died, he turned on her. And they were separated anyway because they were in different prisons, and so they weren't lovers anymore until she didn't have the control over him that she used to have. And I remember when he held a reporter hostage with a pen. He had it up her nose and he was going to pierce her brain. And so he wasn't wrapped too tight either.
Well, what could have happened to him? He's already being charged with two murders. What's one more murder? Who was that? The person that he did that to was a reporter.
No, he killed a banker in the Bahamas, and he killed a businessman in California. They killed a businessman in California.
What was the purpose of killing him?
What was the purpose of killing them?
Yeah.
They were trying to get their money. They were trying to transfer funds into their own accounts. With Irene Silverman, Sante Kimes dressed up as Irene Silverman and had things notarized as Irene Silverman, and she was going to pretend she was her and get the deed to the townhouse, which was on 65th Street, East 65th Street, and take all her money and her property. Now, I
Well,
knew exactly where that body was, and it was in a different location than we went to. And I actually had one of the medical examiners come down there with me. She was a friend of mine. And we found the whole cluster of bones on the ground. So I took her back there with me, and she goes, they were all dog bones. It was a Santeria burial and ritual location. And I kept feeling that Irene Silverman was buried somewhere near there, but the police department would not send a cadaver dog out with me. They refused to. And the district attorney actually called me into their office one day and said, we do not want you on that block anymore. We do not want you near the house anymore. We don't want you involved in this case anymore. It was because I was too close. And I heard oftentimes that psychic detectives that are really good are often considered suspects themselves because they know things about cases that is not public information.
by the
So
way,
they're considered
two of the
themselves.
detectives, two of the detectives from the 19th precinct, which covered the area where Irene Silverman lived, visited me after you made a statement on TV, and I made some statement, and what they told me was exactly what happened to you. They told me to tell you to stop investigating, and for me too, to keep out of it, or we were going to get in trouble for obstruction of some stupid crime. And ironically, a woman that I met casually years later had a problem with a jeweler, and who recommended me to her was the detectives from that case. So yeah, it's a small world we live in, you know. Yeah, but you know, they would look. They had no opinion one way or the other. They were just told by the district attorney, tell these people to stop it because it was making them look bad. That's all I could say.
Yeah, yeah. How do you tell who's a crazy person and who's a real psychic?
Well, if the woman goes out with me on a date, she's crazy. Okay, that's I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say, really. You can't, you know, you can meet people that are strange, but they're not crazy. You can meet people that are normal and that people that apparently are normal, but they're crazy. You don't know. It's not, you know, one of the things, one of the first cases I had, I worked for the gambling commission, and I had a complainant, and I in my report I put in, this woman was 80 years old. She was obviously crazy. My boss went crazy. He said, you can't say something like that. You're not a psychiatrist. You're not a psychologist. You cannot make a statement like that. So what you have to do is you have to say, well, this person was acting strange, or this person was doing something, but you cannot make a diagnostic statement that the person's crazy like that. You just can't. You don't have any professional expertise in that area, so you can't say someone's crazy. You could say they're strange, that they're acting funny, but you can't say they're crazy.
Right, right. Well, thank you, Vinny, for joining me tonight.
My
It's
pleasure.
been a pleasure to see you. And good luck with your podcast and your books.
Thank you.
And I'll see you soon.
Okay. Good night.
Good night. Join Vinny's podcast tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Eastern Time on his Facebook channel and also on YouTube. And he discusses more politics and some of the cases he was involved with. So join Vinny on his podcast as well. Join me next week as we'll be going to a store with over 2,000 magical oils, and we'll learn how to dip incense the correct way. We'll also be joined by a Reiki master who will explain the transfer of energy through hands-on methods, symbols, stones, and chakra work. So until next week, have a magical time and blessed be.